Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Break into College. I'm your host, Lavetta Jenkins, the Outreach and Wellness Coordinator for Barrier Breakers. Today, I am joined with my guest, Mr. Jeffrey Pierce II. He is the Director of Undergrad Admissions and Recruitment at Florida A&M University. And today, he's going to tell us all about how to run the perfect play for a great application at one of the most prestigious HBCUs. Welcome, Jeffrey. It's so good to have you here.
It's so great to be here.
All right, so I know a little bit about you, but I want you to share some about you with our listeners and our viewers and exactly what it is you do at Florida A&M.
Absolutely. So I'm Jeffrey Pierce II, and I have the pleasure of serving Florida A&M University as the Director of Undergraduate Admissions and Recruitment. And what is so interesting is the timing of this podcast is because today is my 15-year anniversary from when I started my professional journey 15 years ago as an admissions recruiter. And so it's a pleasure to be here. I've been in this space for 15 years as of
Wow.
today. So excited to share with you.
Wow, 15 years seems a long time for somebody who looks like they're still 20, but that's great history at Florida A&M. So I got to tell you, Jeffrey, now listen, I know nothing of sports and colleges, but there are two things I know about Florida A&M. I know that you're an HBCU and I know you've got a great football team, but that can't be the only thing about Florida A&M University. Tell me about the academics of the school if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, Florida A&M University. Let me start by first mentioning that, for 7 consecutive years,
Okay.
we've been ranked the number one public HBCU, again, for 7 years in a row by U.S. News and World Report. And so when I think about the academics, or when I want to speak about the academics of Florida A&M University, the A, of course, agricultural, right? And of course, the M is mechanical. Mechanical speaking towards our emphasis on engineering. But when we think about agricultural, we think about programs that speak to agricultural sciences, food science, as well as agribusiness, right? And so most students, when they think of agriculture, they're thinking of, just how crops grow,
Yeah.
just what we think of, right?
Mhm.
But then when we dive a little bit deeper into that, there are areas such as food science, right? How contamination is prevented, why bread rises, what makes food spoil, how preservatives work, things of that nature, right? So we're talking about the safety of it, we're talking about the chemistry behind it, how foods are formulated for taste, health, shelf life, right? Just the nutritional aspect. But then we also get into the business side of it, right? How food moves from farm to table,
Mm.
pricing, market trends, the impact on global trade. These are things that the program here at Florida A&M, provides for students. Again, it's not just how you grow crops, but you can get into the science and the business of it as well. And then when we think about, engineering, right? Some students will say, well, what is engineering, right? We're talking about problem solving, we're talking about critical thinking, creativity, innovation, collaboration, teamwork. And specifically, when I talk about mechanical engineering, right, we talk about cars, robotics, we're talking about HVAC systems, prosthetics. These things really give students like a hands on idea in terms of like students being able to design something as simple as a catapult, or maybe build a balloon powered car, something of that nature. And so these are some of the top programs that we have at the institution, as well as computer science, nursing, business, as well as our pre-med program. So that's just a little bit from, and again, just a small smidget, from an academic standpoint. We also have over we have 14 colleges and schools, right, that
Mm.
students can choose from over 100 degree programs, right? Students can come to Florida A&M University as an undergraduate. They can receive another degree at the graduate level, and then they can also receive another degree at the PhD level, right? So undergraduate, so bachelor's, master's, doctorate, even some professional programs that we have at the institution as well. So lots of lots to choose from
Hey.
when you think about the academics and things that we offer here at the institution.
I'm glad you mentioned that because honestly, when I thought of Florida A&M, I never thought that it was that. I thought agriculture was simply, just people in overalls learning how to farm. Had no idea that food preservation and all the rest of that went into it. And it really is a fully well-rounded program that you have for not just one section of it, but for each individual focus. Now, say there was somebody who, wanted to kind of get into, let's say, one of the engineerings. What would you tell them about the steps they need to take for one of the engineer programs in order to make sure that they align now and once they get into college with their career goal?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Um, I will start and say, make sure you are extremely strong in math. I'll dive a little bit deeper into, just the overall process of, when considering an institution, when considering a program of study, right? And then I'm going to come back and dive a little bit more deeper into engineering. But for one, we always encourage students to really have a good understanding of the career pathway that
Mhm,
they're planning to go into, right? And
mhm,
essentially work backwards, right? So if you know what career pathway you're looking to go into, now what degree program aligns with that career pathway? Okay. And then from there, have an honest conversation with yourself
okay,
to say, well, this degree plan is going to be heavy math. I know math may not be a strong area of mine.
mhm,
So maybe I should revisit, what my career plan is, right? Like, why am I choosing that career plan? Because ultimately, sometimes students will choose a pathway for a reason that may be associated with money. And I get it,
right,
there's nothing wrong with that. But we really want students to have some deep internal conversations about where they currently are from an academic standpoint and
mhm,
how that can prepare them for the pathways that they're looking to pursue. And again, specifically with engineering, being very strong in math, right? When you think about our curriculum here at the institution, and you're talking not just engineering, but also STEM based programs, they're going to be heavy math courses
mhm,
in that curriculum. And a lot of our programs start with calculus as the entry level point. And so I tell students all the time, make sure, if you're considering engineering or any of our STEM programs, make sure you have a good solid foundation in math because it's going to be math heavy. And I also tell students, we're interested in them coming to FAMU to have a good time, right?
mhm.
But not to be here for a long time. And so having those honest conversations with themselves up front really helps make sure that they have a great social experience when they're here, as well as a great academic experience.
Mhm. I think I hear a lot about the social experience, but more so football, band, and I again said I know nothing of sports, but I know you got a great football team and I've seen the band. But there has got to be other sports out there that you offer that are not just football. And I know most colleges, if you have football, you also have basketball. But what else does
Yeah.
Florida A&M University have?
No, that's a that's a really good question. As you mentioned, most folks know us for our football team, the Marching 100, and as
Hmm.
you mentioned, band basketball as well. But in addition to that, we have baseball, we have softball, we have women's tennis, we have men
Okay.
and women's track and field. Of course, we have men and women's cross country, as well as women's volleyball. So outside of the most known
Hmm.
sports, there are other athletic programs that students can be a part of here. We're also a Division I institution from an athletic standpoint. We
Okay.
are part of the SWAC. SWAC is short for Southwestern Athletic Conference. And
Okay.
so I dare not name any of our competitors on this recording, but just
Mhm.
know we are a part of the SWAC, and we are competitive in the SWAC.
Okay. I get it 100%. So, further dispelling myths, because I said all I knew was football.
Yeah,
I do know that you are a historically Black college and university, HBCU, but there's a myth that HBCUs only admit students who are of African American descent. That is not true, correct?
absolutely. I will say that, HBCUs, we were not created to be exclusive.
Hmm.
Since our inception, we have always been open to those who are interested in furthering their education. And so while we are an HBCU that primarily serves a particular population, we are open to those from other ethnic backgrounds to pursue and continue their education on our campus.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that, everyone else knew that HBCU did not mean, closed off to everyone except students of African American descent. We welcome everybody at HBCUs as well. But speaking of welcoming everybody,
Always happy to dispel a myth.
right, always, always. So because of that, let's dispel something else. People think that it is super hard to get in to Florida A&M. Tell me about the admissions process.
Yeah. So I will be extremely particular with my language.
Mm-hmm.
And while I don't want to say it is super hard to
Mm-hmm.
get into Florida A&M University, I will say it is extremely competitive. Our most recent class that was admitted to the institution, our middle 50% GPA was a 3.6 to a 4.2, right? That's the middle 50% range of the students who were admitted to the institution. And allow me to just unpack that just a little bit. Most students, when they hear that, they're like, wow, I've got to have a 3.6. And what I'll tell students is that those are not minimums, right? That is a range of the middle 50
Mm-hmm.
of the students who were admitted. So, can you be admitted or considered for admission if you have less than a 3.6? You can be considered. Were they students less than a 3.6 admitted? Absolutely. Because again, this is the middle 50% range. Were
Mhm,
there students above a 4.2 admitted to the institution? Absolutely. This 3.6 to a 4.2 range is what we call a recalculated GPA,
mhm,
recalculated core GPA. So we're looking at your English, your math, your social science, your sciences, your foreign languages, as well as electives,
mhm,
right? So we're looking at a core unit. We're looking at the core units to recalculate that GPA. From a test score standpoint, our middle 50% range for the SAT was a 1080 to a 1230. For the ACT, it was a 22 to a 27. And
mhm,
again, this represents the middle 50%. And so we want students to understand, while again, I won't use the language of it's hard to get into Florida A&M.
mhm,
It is extremely competitive. We are taking an approach of also taking into consideration the major in which a student is pursuing to help with our evaluations. So again, I think it's important for students to know, okay, what career pathway am I choosing?
okay,
What my academic profile looks like, what my academic strength is, and
mhm,
then how does that prepare me for where I'm trying to go?
mhm,
So that's just a little bit of information about the competitive aspect. And so, again, those numbers that I shared represent the middle 50%. And we're looking for students to be near those ranges, within that range, or
mhm.
outside of that range on the high end, right? In addition to that, what's also important is, are you taking AP courses, honors, dual enrollment? Are you in a
Mhm.
high school where there's an opportunity for you to ultimately have your associate's degree once you graduate, right? Those things are important, and those are the types of students that we're looking for in the admissions process.
Mm, I like that. Spelling it out and making it plain. Now, another thing that I want to ask you about is, housing. Is it true that, in some cases I've known that incoming freshmen have to stay on campus that first year? Is that true as well at Florida A&M?
Absolutely. It is very much true that all first year students are required to reside on campus.
Okay.
Uh, and some students may frown at that, right?
Hmm.
From our standpoint and from data,
Hmm.
right? Students are more likely to be successful when they have that experience on campus their first year. And
Hmm.
so we're wanting to make sure students are positioned for success because, again, as I mentioned before, we want you to have a good time. We want you to be here for a good time, but not for a long time. We have a very aggressive goal to make sure that we can graduate students within 4 years of them entering the institution, right? We hear a lot about 6 year graduation rates and so forth, but we are pressing very hard on making sure that when students enter the doors their first year, they are going to leave the institution within 4 years.
Hmm.
I know this is talking about residential halls, but yes, it is required to stay on campus. We actually just opened a new residential hall this
Okay.
fall. It is called Venom Landing. It is one of again, it's our newest residential hall on campus. But then we do have a few other residential facilities for first year students.
Okay, that makes sense. I feel like it's good to stay on campus that first year, so that way you can get acclimated to how it's all going to go, getting up on time, getting in class on time. And it's hard to do that if you are staying off campus and you're farther away and, may not be adhering to certain personal guidelines and curfews the way you would if you were on campus. So I definitely see how beneficial it is to stay on campus that first year.
Yeah,
Now,
it's a transition,
yeah,
you know,
definitely.
coming from high school to the collegiate level. It is a transition, with you being responsible for, maybe waking yourself up and,
Mhm.
making sure you get the class on time. And how much easier can that be if you're right there on campus? I mean,
Right.
there's so many other dynamics that come into play when you're off campus. All
Mhm.
right, I've got to get up time enough to make sure I'm ready. I've got to
Mhm.
make sure I start the car if it's the winter time to make sure it's
Right.
warm. I have to factor in traffic. Not much
Mhm.
traffic here in Tallahassee, but these are things I have to factor in. Well, where am I going to find a place to park on campus? So all of that is important when you're trying to
Mhm.
get up for an 8 o'clock class
Right.
and you reside off campus. Whereas if
Mhm.
you're on campus, you may be able to get up right at 7:30 and get the
Mhm.
class on
And
time.
let us not forget that, "Oh, I'll get gas in the morning" situation that happens with a lot of people that you should not do. Although
Yeah.
you should not get it in the dark, you should not wait to get gas in the morning because that will set you back. Even when you think it's not going to, it's going to set you back. There's a benefit of, fresh adults staying on campus, and that way, if you do oversleep, you still only got like 5 minutes to run to your building and get wherever it is you gotta go.
Right.
I appreciate, as a parent who's had a child that was in college, I appreciate Florida A&M University having that kind of written rule of being on campus that first year. It also gives parents a little bit of, kind of like a confidence in knowing that their child isn't just out there in the wild blowing around and doing whatever they wanna do. There's rules to be followed when you're in, residential housing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's my other thing that I want to know because it is competitive, with applications to get into the school. Tell me exactly if there was somebody out there right now who maybe is a junior in high school or a parent who really wants their child to have that HBCU experience, how would they go about applying to Florida A&M University?
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. So we are a member of the Common app.
Awesome.
And so Common App gives students an opportunity to apply to up to 20 institutions at one time.
Mhm.
So students would submit their application through the Common App. So if you're a junior specifically, our applications open August 1st. So this being your junior year, if I had to provide some advice or some counsel or recommendation in terms of what you should be focusing on, I would
Mhm.
say really making sure you have a very strong academic year. Because essentially, if you submit your application to us in August, we are looking at ninth, 10th, and 11th grade coursework. So that is the information that we will be taking into consideration in our review process, particularly for those students who may apply early action, right?
Mhm.
If you're applying for regular decision, those dates are more in the spring. That would give you an opportunity to include the first semester of your senior year coursework on your transcript. But if you're really considering early action, I would say your junior year, you want to make sure you finish strong to build on the work that you've done in ninth and 10th grade. That's from an academic standpoint. From a test score standpoint, I would say the fall semester, you should at least take the SAT or the ACT, a standardized exam,
Mhm.
if you haven't taken it already. I'm sure in the 10th grade, those students may have taken like a practice exam and kind of gotten a feel for it. But I advise students to always take an exam either in the fall semester or the spring semester. And then I'll go a little bit further there. I've advised students who appreciate this, taking one exam in the fall, taking the other exam in the spring. So now
Mhm.
you have an idea of which exam do I feel most comfortable with? Is it
Mhm.
the SAT or is it the ACT? And then again, this is junior year. And then summer, as you transition into your senior year, utilize the summer for some intense test prep. That way, once the semester begins in August, you can register for that exam that you feel most comfortable with, right? So you could probably take an early August exam, a September, or even an October exam so that you can then have at least three scores and you can have shown you would have shown some progress in how you test on those exams. So that would be the play that I would say run, if we're talking a little bit of athletics, one exam in the fall, one in the spring, summer test prep, and then choosing an exam early fall of the following year to submit with your early action application.
I love that. That is so good. Run a play in order to make sure that you've got like a perfect application for to be considered for Florida A&M because it's not just about going to the school to have fun. You are there to learn. And I know for a fact that you've got some of the most competitive programs, especially when it comes to the engineering. You spoke briefly about prosthetics. People don't normally think of that as being a mechanical
Yeah,
engineer degree. And it absolutely is because when you think about it, it's a machine of sorts. Just
absolutely.
like I had never thought about agriculture being anything above growing the crop. No, you got to figure out, shelf stability,
Yep.
how to make it healthy and give it some shelf stability. And I think that it's such a great opportunity to learn at such a historic place and to get all of this great information, right there in Florida in the dorms on your first year. I think that it's such a great opportunity. What would you say to a parent or a student who was considering Florida A&M University? What would you say to them if they were really considering your university?
Yeah. For one, I would say research, right?
Mhm.
And research can be one of two things, or it could be both of these things, right? Visit our website to learn more about the institution as a whole.
Mhm.
Within that same lane, follow us on Instagram, right? To get a
Mhm.
picture or an idea of some real time experience.
Mhm.
I'm also going to put a little plug in here. Make sure you all follow our admissions Instagram page. It's at FAMU Admissions, all one word. Um, so I would say, definitely research our website, follow our pages on social media, and
Mhm.
that's from a distance, right? Get involved with some of our virtual opportunities. In our admissions office, we host virtual sessions for students to jump on to learn more about the institution. So that's within that first bucket that I was speaking of. And then the second piece is visit in person, right? We have campus tours throughout the week. We have prospective student events that happen throughout the year. So in the fall, we have preview day, right? So it gives you an opportunity to visit our campus, to meet more with faculty, to meet more with staff, to learn more in depth about what that FAMU or Florida A&M University experience is going to be like. So I would say one of those two things or both of those things to really learn more about Florida A&M University. The biggest thing too is students, I want them to understand that it has to be a good fit for them, right?
Mhm.
Like while we want students to enroll and while we're looking for a certain type of student based off of the profile that we talked about earlier, it
Mhm.
also has to be a good fit for the student as well. So I would give that advice to families who are thinking about or considering Florida A&M University.
That was very, very good information. Jeffrey, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest today and for teaching us all about, the perfect play to make sure that we have great applications for FAMU and telling me about more than just sports. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation. I'm excited that I was able to share some more information about our institution. And
Mhm.
hopefully, those of you who are considering us will really give us some strong consideration and that this information is helpful for you.
I know that it was. Thank you again.
Absolutely.